Athey, Athey. I've had her on before, who is all of 28, and it proves a thesis of mine. Wisdom is related to whether or not you are wise, not whether or not you are young. The Snowflakes Revolt is the book, just come out. The subtitle is How Woke Millennials Hijacked American Media. Woke millennials. And the examples are a legion. Anyway, Amber, welcome back to the Dennis Prager Show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be back.
How great on a scale of 1 to 10?
How great? I would say probably a 10.
Wow. I expected 9.3. I was not sure what you would say. You know, I should have warned you because we spoke for a few minutes before you came on. I throw these curveball questions that come into my fertile mind out of nowhere. I mean, how many people are going to ask you, how happy are you to come on their show?
Well, that's why this show is good fun.
Well,
that's a 10 out of 10 on good.
That's right. Well, thank you. Well said. So, by the way, just remind me and my audience, what is a millennial?
A millennial is someone who was born between, I believe, the years 1980 and 1997. It's about that range. So I am actually a younger millennial. I was born in 1994, so I'm pretty close to that cutoff.
And then after millennials is Gen Z?
That's correct.
The ones
the
born
Zoomers, as they're called.
The what? Zoomers?
The Zoomers is their nickname.
Oh, I see.
Yes.
As opposed to boomers.
Right.
I get it. I hear you. So you attended Georgetown University, and you were the most, according to the book, the most outspoken conservative there. Is that accurate?
Yes, that is beyond dispute.
So here is I'm going to throw an interesting thought at you, and I'd like you to react, or you don't have to even react, but I want you to hear this. If I were to try to understand where you come from, I don't mean background and all of that, that's part of it. In other words, what made you a fighter, to be very, very precise? My answer is largely that's your nature. And I'm curious if you would react to that.
That's an interesting point, and I think that is mostly true. I do have an older brother, and he is political, but not very public about it.
Exactly. That's right.
Right. He works as a police officer.
Same genes, same environment, same home, same religion. That's exactly right. And it's true for every fighter that I know. It's like God or nature or both throw out a certain number of people who will fight for good things. You just happen to be one of them, and thank God you are. I have no better explanation. But tell me about your background. You had a very interesting statement to me when I asked you about did you grow up conservative, and you said yes. And tell us about your parents.
Absolutely. So my parents are working class Americans. My dad was a union plumber for the entirety of his adult career. My mom was a video store manager while my dad went through trade school and then ended up becoming a stay-at-home mom after I was born in 94. And they always were very clear with me that life is not fair. And they taught me and my brother the value of hard work. They taught us to take responsibility for our own lives. And as we were talking before we came on, that is such a difference from a large swath of the millennial generation, which is very entitled. And not just entitled to things, but they think that they're entitled to be protected from things, meaning they don't believe they should have to face challenges. And anything that is considered offensive or troubling to them has to be destroyed. And they operate under the concept that life should be fair. And maybe life should be fair. That's obviously a different ontological question, but it's not the reality. And these are people who just fundamentally don't grasp reality.
I have to say, when a good-looking woman says ontological, I have a very positive reaction. So as I said to you earlier, that being told in your upbringing that life is unfair is, as I said to you, it's the best vaccine you can take against depression and against bad ideas. They, as you said, this generation of which you're a member, expects life to be uncomplicated. Mm-hmm. That's why, Adam Carolla and I made a film called Safe Spaces, or No Safe Spaces, sorry. And this whole notion of a safe space embodies what you're talking about. You're unhappy that a conservative came to your campus. Come and have hot chocolate and play with Play-Doh. Did Georgetown have safe spaces?
They did, and one of them was implemented because of something I did. When I was the chair of College Republicans my junior year, we decided to bring Dr. Christina Hoff Sommers to campus. And we were, I believe, the first major university to do so, even before Oberlin. And the reaction was very aggressive from the campus left. I was reported to the administration for allegedly creating an unsafe environment for my fellow students. They had a safe space next door to the speech itself. They demanded that we institute a trigger warning for the event, which we refused to do. And then even afterwards, when video of the event went up on YouTube, Georgetown itself, the administration, tried to get us to remove that video, even though the event was open to the public. So it was a major fiasco where these people who didn't have to attend the event, didn't even have to listen to what Dr. Sommers had to say, had somehow made themselves the victim of a speech that had yet to happen.
How many allies did you have at Georgetown?
It's not a lot. The College Republicans had an active membership base of about 40 students. And out of those, I would say maybe 5 to 10 were as outspoken or close to as outspoken as I was. The rest of them really just wanted to avoid controversy. And that was a problem, obviously, because there's a lot of safety in numbers when you're in these very contentious political environments. And we simply didn't have that. A lot of us felt like we were on an island. And I heard from quite a few of my friends after the Christina Hoff Sommers speech that they never wanted to do anything like that again because of how mentally draining it was to be constantly defending yourself from whatever accusations they were throwing out, from rape apologists to racists to misogynists. I mean,
to regard Christine Hoff Sommers as some hate-filled human being, it's equally absurd and vile. The woman is such a serious, decent, professorial even individual. I know her for many years. So she came. Did she give the speech unmolested?
She did. There were people in the back who had signs of protest, and of course there were some people who asked some rather nasty questions. But I think the entire event really demonstrated the arrogance and narcissism that defines my generation as well, because these people had basically read her Wikipedia page or maybe Googled Vox for some example of her saying something that
That's
they
what they
disagreed
do.
with.
That's exactly right.
Right.
Yep.
And they somehow thought that they were qualified to take on the decades of research that she had done on feminism and rape culture.
Forgive me, Amber. We have to take a break. Everyone, I'm telling you, I'm reading this book, The Snowflakes Revolt, How Woke Millennials Hijacked American Media. It is up at DennisPrager.com. And I cannot recommend it highly enough. We'll be back with Amber in a moment. Amber Athey, and a very, very important book. By the way, your book has footnotes on the bottom of each page rather than at the end. For that alone, I want you to know I salute you and your publisher.
I know, God bless them.
That is rare. I mean, it used to be common. But in any event, I just thought I'd note that. The Snowflakes Revolt, How Woke Millennials Hijacked American Media. So I'm going to put you on the spot here because they just had a situation. I don't remember the protagonists, But someone on our side was asked, I think a congresswoman, but I'm not certain, what does, by an antagonistic person on the left, so what does woke mean? And she didn't come up with a very good answer. I'm curious how you would define woke.
That was my friend Bethany Mandel, and I really feel for her because she has a chapter in her book defining woke, and I know she knows what it means.
Oh,
so
that was Bethany, really? Oh, that's
Mm-hmm.
fascinating. Well, look at that.
Yeah, so that was a shame. I feel for her. She's getting a lot of heat, but I mean, I think she would probably give a pretty similar answer that I'm going to give, which is obviously that woke actually started as a rather academic term that people of color used to describe the moment that they awakened or woke up to the idea that this country is systemically racist and therefore all the powers that be are aligned against them. And the saying or the thinking is that once you wake up or become woke, you're then able to better fight against that systemic inequality. Now, as the right has adopted the term and used it to describe mostly radical progressivism, it's more mocking the idea that our country is systemically racist and that identity politics is a necessary ideology in order to combat that inequality. And even more so, woke has come to define, I think, just the leftists who reject the fundamental ideals in which America was founded, which is equality of opportunity over equality of outcome. They reject freedom of speech, freedom of religion. They really don't believe in having discourse. They believe in shuttering the other side. And they also believe that they have a monopoly on truth.
So the truth is there's really no difference at this time between woke and left. There is between woke and liberal because I believe liberal
Yes.
and left are not the same thing. But liberals vote for the left, so they do as much damage. But that's a separate issue. So is that fair to say that essentially, in terms of positions held, woke and left are synonymous?
I agree. I think woke is synonymous with the illiberal left, as you
Yes,
put it.
right, exactly. So your thesis is essentially that how, again, the subtitle, How Woke Millennials Hijacked American Media, is in the title, that they are snowflakes, that they are incapable of dealing with the fact that life has challenges and pain. Is that a fair summary?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. By the way, is there a more dramatic example, and you would know this because you wrote a book on this, but I want people to know that even those of us who didn't write a book on this are aware of the, hijacking of American media by these millennial snowflakes. What happened at the New York Times when its longtime opinion editor invited a Republican senator to write a column? Tell us the story.
Absolutely. So at the New York Times, during the summer of 2020, when there were riots breaking out across the country, Tom Cotton was invited to write an opinion piece about sending in the National Guard to quell the riots. This piece sparked an internal revolt in the New York Times newsroom. And not only just in terms of complaints on Slack channels or to editorial directors, but there was also a public social media campaign that these woke staffers instituted where they accused their colleagues who had published this opinion piece of causing harm to Black New York Times staffers. They legitimately claimed that the publication of this op-ed was going to lead to violence against Black people. And what ensued was essentially an apology tour on behalf of New York Times leadership. It led to the resignation of several of the opinion editors there, including James Bennett. And the op-ed to this day has an editor's note at the top of it indicating that it should have never been published in the
Really?
first place.
I did not know that. That's awesome. Yes. It's so... They're stupid at the New York Times. Aside from censorious and vile, they're stupid because it's their way of acknowledging we never publish anything we differ with.
That's exactly right. And what's insane about this internal takeover of all of these media companies is that usually the people who are doing it, who are pushing for progressive activism over a search for facts and truth, is that they're usually the most mediocre, poorest performing employees, or at least in the lowest level positions. So they're people who don't have any authority whatsoever and don't really have much talent, and yet they demand that they have outsized influence over the editorial direction of these papers.
Forgive me, I have a tough question, seriously tough question for you. I wrote a column, been writing columns for decades, and one recent column I wrote about what I believe, and I gave a lot of data, the disproportionate influence of women in the woke world. So we're going to take a break, but I don't want to keep people hanging, as it were. Do you essentially agree with that?
Yes.
Okay, I want to hear your thoughts on that. This is an important woman and an important book. That's why I'm taking so much time. The Snowflakes Revolt, How Woke Millennials Hijacked American Media. And it's under 200 pages, almost. We return. You're listening to Amber Athey. The Snowflakes Revolt. She's a millennial herself. She is a writer for, what is your title actually? Washington editor for The Spectator, which I happily pay to subscribe and read. It's a wonderful site. And the book is the Snowflakes Revolt, How Woke Millennials Hijacked American Media. I'm still, by the way, reeling from I did not know that the New York Times has an advisory at the Tom Cotton article. What does it say? We regret having published this? What was the advisory? Well, I'm not hearing Amber.
I think it says something along the lines of it didn't go through the proper editorial process, and it's essentially a warning that the piece should not have been published in its current form. It's really incredible. I encourage everyone to go read it.
It is incredible. So I asked you a very provocative question, but it's not meant to be provocative. I didn't write my column or say it regularly. Women are disproportionately ruining America. And it just hit me over time how disproportionately female for example, the belief that minors should have breasts removed on healthy girls if they say they're boys. It is women who are propelling this much more than men. And these, I'll bet that was true at the New York Times with the Millennial Revolt. So you said you agree, and then we took a break. So give me some thoughts on this.
Well, wokeness fundamentally is a manipulation of people's emotions because it's telling them that in order to make life easier for a group of people or to make life more fair for a group of people who have been historically disadvantaged, you have to support this certain slate of policy proposals or this group of ideologies. And women, of course, would have this resonate more with them because, as we know, and I would probably get in trouble for even saying this, there are biological differences wherein women tend to be more empathetic, more compassionate, and tend to be caregivers. And so they are, it appeals to them more, the idea that they can help people out and give people a hand up if they support this progressive ideology. And I think this has only ramped up and become more toxic over the past decade or so because women are getting married at older ages and having fewer children. So their caregiving sentiments are not being directed towards families, they're being directed towards politics.
What an intelligent last comment. That's right.
Thank you.
I'm going to get in trouble because I don't do the hiring at PragerU, but I'm going to definitely recommend you give a video. Your mind is very sharp and clear. It is truly a pleasure. I have a different take on the exact same first half of your last sentence, and your take is at least as accurate as mine. My take is women are not getting married, so they don't have the male influence in their lives. They're their only influencers, they and fellow girlfriends, as it were. And that is it's totally understandable, but unless you believe that men and women think the same, which people on the left apparently do think, but is not true, there is a problem. And I have said, and I'm attacked all the time by the left, which brings me great joy, by the way, just as a note to you, that girls must be, I said this on the Young Turks. To their credit, they actually invited me on. The left almost never hears from people like us. And anyway, and so they just found it absurd that I would say that you have to raise daughters to control their natures just as much as you have to raise boys to control their natures. And the nature that the girl has to control is not every emotion is a valid policymaker, but whether for herself or for society. But you have added, and so the lack of male influence was my take, and yours. I'm not dropping mine, but yours is just as valid. The normal direction of female compassion and caregiving is in the micro, but they don't have that anymore.
Yes, and I think that's another feminine impulse that we usually have to rein in. It's that we can't save everybody. And
yeah, hold on there. Okay, keep that
Sure.
thought. You can't save everybody. I'm going to come back. This is just to the Spectator, and she is Amber Athey, Athey. So let's go back to what you were saying. I was talking to you about women and the entire millennial snowflake issue. You were about to say, if you remember, tell me.
Women think that they can save everyone. That's part of our natural feminine impulse, is that we want to help other people. But part of growing up is realizing that, one, you can't help people who don't want to help themselves. And two, you certainly can't help people who view their entire lives as a product of the environment around them, and that everything is happening to them, as if there's some passive thing blowing in the wind. But because, I think, underscoring your point, women don't have male figures much in their lives anymore, and certainly not husbands until much later in life, they never learn to hone that impulse. And so they get themselves caught up in this idea that if they just vote the right way, or if they just show up at the right political march, that they can help entire groups of millions of people who they believe are disadvantaged.
Yes, that is what is happening. You went to Georgetown. Georgetown isn't it nominally a Catholic university?
Jesuit, so take that.
Oh, that's
what
funny.
You will.
Oh, that is precious. I'm Jewish, and I got your point.
We used to call it, when I was there, me and my Catholic friends, we would call it Catholic in name only. So kind of like a Republican.
Right, kind
of.
Right. Well, Catholic in name only is common. Protestant in name only is common, or Christian in name only, and Jewish in name only is also common. You can write your next book, How Woke Millennials Hijacked American Religion. This one is hijacked
Definitely.
American media. I'm not kidding.
It's 100% true.
Yeah. And if you do that, just mention that Dennis Prager gave me the idea on his show.
Deal.
A deal. So I gave the example of, which you, of course, elaborated on, of the New York Times Revolt by millennials, exactly what you said, for publishing one piece by one Republican senator. You have another example? I mean, is it true at USA Today? Is it true at the Washington Post? Is it true at CNN? Is it true everywhere?
Yes, it is. And one of my favorite examples from the book is Politico, because this is one that usually is not brought up when conservatives talk about the media going to the left. Politico is, of course, known for its morning newsletter playbook that used to be a must read for any resident of DC or anyone who worked in politics. But ever since Politico allowed Ben Shapiro to guest author playbook, it has been in shambles. At that time, these woke staffers wrote a letter to the editor complaining about the fact that Shapiro was allowed to guest author playbook. And as former employees of Politico tell me, that was the moment that they realized just how many woke millennials were in the newsroom. And so they started to try to exert more influence. And over the next couple of years, they complained about staffers who wrote about transgender issues. One of them, by the name of Gabby Orr, actually had to go through a struggle session with the diversity editor where she was told that she had not properly contextualized conservatives she quoted in the article as transphobic, and that she had improperly used the term biological male, which implies that a transgender woman is not actually a woman. And after that, they brought in a trans lobby to lecture the entire reporting staff on how they were allowed to write about transgender issues, and also updated the style guide to remove all gendered language, regardless of whether it was accurate language or not.
Where did I just see that somebody, oh yes, how ironic, the woman, Anna Kasparian, I think is her name, at Young Turks, was apparently attacked for not using birthing person and saying woman.
Yes.
Are you familiar with this?
Yes, she tweeted about how dehumanizing the term is, even as a leftist. I think she considers herself a progressive. And she got piled on by people who claim that those terms are only used in a clinical setting. Well, that's a lie, because if you go to the Politico style guide I was just referencing, they now use terms like pregnant people or person who is menstruating, because they believe that it is not inclusive if you don't mention the fact that women who identify as men can still have periods. But of course, women who identify as men are still women. So they're saying that women's not inclusive, which is obviously a lie. But this is about control of language, because what follows control of language is control of the mind.
That's exactly right. So I know the Young Turks frequently watch and listen to this show because they so often attack me. And so if you guys are listening at the Young Turks, Anna, I hope this begins a process for you of understanding how despicable your side is, how sick, how closed, and it is sick. I tend not to use psychological terms to describe moral concepts, but it is sick. Not to be able to say a woman gave birth, but having to say a birthing person. By the way, medical schools many of them are now saying that their students should not use male and female.
Yes.
Yeah.
I reported actually recently on Georgetown Medical School. I found out that in some of their courses for medical students, they were teaching them that puberty blockers and hormone therapy is reversible for children.
Oh my God. Hold on. Every break I think, okay, I'll say goodbye to her, and I can't. We'll be back. This has been terrific.
I really appreciate you having me on for so long. This is great.
It's, I do whatever I want with my show. And I love depth. That's why television is such a wasteland. I mean, I go on TV. The only reason I go on television is because it's important for the brand. But you're on at most 3 minutes.
Yeah.
And you've been on, except for ads, for an hour. I mean, people get to know you and your ideas as a result. But I don't keep all authors on this long, believe me. But you've been blessed with a clear mind. I'm very happy you're getting married. I bug every single male and female in my whole environment at PragerU and elsewhere. You got to get married. I mean, to think that there was a time when there was a song, love and marriage go together like a horse and carriage. I mean, and to think about what we have today.
It's so sad. Some of my female friends still don't really get it, and it breaks my heart.
Well, it'll break their heart later. I have literally 1,000 columns up on the internet. Only one did I not write. All I did was transcribe a 50-year-old woman who called my show. This is one of the great benefits of doing a talk show, because you talk with, not to, the world. Mm-hmm. And she had a PhD. She was a CEO. She made a good income and described going back home every night to an empty home. And it was, all I did is publish. I just transcribed what she said. That's all I did. Warn women who are 25 and have bought the belief that a woman without a man is like a fish without a bicycle. Remember that? You heard that saying? Yeah, mm-hmm. That was my time. Thank God I knew that was nuts. All right, we'll be back on. And yell at Adam. Athey. I want you to know that taking you again to Israel this fall, people who have come with me said it was transformative in the best sense of just an extraordinary experience. The Israel Ministry of Tourism also has a website about travel to Israel, whether you go with me or alone or with another group. And it's holyland.israel.travel, holyland.israel.travel. And at DennisPrager.com is the banner for information about the trip with Mike Gallagher and myself to Israel. So visit both sites. I think it'll tempt you tremendously. The Israel Ministry of Tourism one is holyland.israel.travel and DennisPrager.com, the banner about my trip. Well, Amber, Athey, this was a terrific hour with you. What do you do for hope?
Absolutely. Well, I'm Catholic, so for me, a lot of my hope comes through the form of going to church on a regular basis. But in specific regard to the question of the woke millennials and their takeover of the American media, there's one really obvious thing that conservatives and Republicans can do that I think would delegitimize a lot of these outlets who have allowed themselves to be taken over by the progressive mob. And that's to stop wanting them to affirm us. We don't need them to tell us that what we're doing is valid and true in order for it to be valid and true. And yet I see so many people on the right who want to be quoted in the New York Times, who want to have their op-eds published by the Washington Post, Republican members of Congress who are constantly giving their scoops to the mainstream media as opposed to independent and conservative-leaning outlets. And all they're doing is giving more power to people who absolutely despise them and would destroy them in a minute if they had the opportunity. So I think it's time for us to be stronger in standing up to them and refusing to give them the legitimacy that they so crave and desire and require in order to have that power.
Excellent. Excellent. I say repeatedly, if you want to be held in esteem by the New York Times, you are lost to your values.
Yes.
It is as simple as that. This is the second of what I hope will be a continuous journey together. You're terrific. Your book is The Snowflakes Revolt. It is up at DennisPrager.com. Amber, Athey, good luck on your upcoming marriage, and we are a better country for having you in it.
Thank you so much, Dennis. I really appreciate you.